The Rambam tells us in mitzvah number Nun Zayin and Nun Ches, mitzvah number 57 and 58, that on the 14th day of the month of Iyar, there's a mitzvah to bring the second Paschal lamb. For those that were unable to bring the first Paschal lamb on the 14th day of Nisan, for the first Passover, they can fulfill the second Passover. And therefore, if for some reason they were tamei, impure, or they were far away from the temple, or even if they did it deliberately, they could do right, they could make it up, like a make-up test, on the second Pesach, which is on the 14th day of the month of Iyar. And then that night, which is the night of the 15th of Iyar, they are to eat the Pesach offering, the Paschal lamb, together with matzah and maror in their house. However, the halacha is also that you are allowed to have chametz in your house on the second Pesach, on Pesach Sheni. What is the pshat of this mitzvah and the remez and the drush and soid and chassidus? The simple interpretation is that the Torah tells us in the portion of Behaalosechah, in chapter number 9, that God tells Moses and instructs him that the Jewish people should bring in the second year after leaving the land of Egypt, they are to bring the Paschal lamb. And then it goes on to say that there were those that were impure and could not bring the Paschal lamb. And they came over to Moshe Rabbeinu and they said, Lo manigara, why should we lose out? Why should we be diminished and not have the opportunity to bring the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb? So Moshe said to them, hold on a second, I will ask of God what to do. So Moshe Rabbeinu goes before God and says, God, what should we do? And God tells Moshe, you should tell them that we will give them a second chance, a Pesach Sheni, a second Paschal lamb. And on the 14th day of the month of Iyar, 1 month later, they will bring also a Paschal lamb, and they will be able to fulfill this mitzvah. According to some opinions, who were the people that requested the second Pesach? They were Mishal and Eltzafan. Mishal and Eltzafan were the cousins of Aaron HaKohen. And the story goes that it was the first day when they inaugurated the temple, the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert. And on that day, the two sons of Aaron went into the Holy of Holies, and they brought a incense that they were not called upon to bring. And because of this, they OD'd on spirituality, on God. And therefore, it was a very, very traumatic day for Aaron. So Moses told Mishal and Eltzafan to take the two bodies out of the Holy of Holies. And this was on the first day of Nisan. And here, when it came to the 14th day of Nisan, they were still not yet purified. And so therefore they told Moshe Rabbeinu, Lo manigara, why should we lose out? We came to do a mitzvah. You requested that we should take out the two bodies from the Holy of Holies, and we did. And now we are diminished. We cannot bring a Paschal lamb. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu went before God, and God said, yes, you could make up for it the following month. And to bring in the teaching of the Hayom Yom, where the Rebbe quotes his father-in-law, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he says the following. Pesach Sheni, the theme of the second Pesach is, es is nicht da, kein verfallen, that it's never too late. In other words, we can allemal verrichten. It's always possible to put things right. Afilu misha haya tamei, misha haya b'derech hachoika, und afilu lochem, as das ist gewähnt bei der Zoynoi, von deswegen kann man Mesaken sein. Which means even if one was ritually impure, or one was far away, or even in a case when the impurity was deliberate, nonetheless, he can correct it. So that is the general theme of Pip Shat on a simple level for the meaning of Pesach Sheni, and that is, it's never too late. What is the remez? What is the hint? The Pesach Sheni alludes also to the coming of Mashiach for the future. Because the word Sheni, second Pesach, alludes to the second and ultimate redemption. We built the first Holy Temple, and then we built the second Holy Temple, but the second Holy Temple was really incomplete because not all the Jews were there, and they were also missing the Holy Ark, etc., etc. And therefore there's a verse in Isaiah chapter 11, verse number 11, which says, "V'hoya b'yomahu," it shall be that day, and Yosef Hashem shenis yadai, and God once again, a second time, will gather in all the Jewish people, just as he did in the days of Mitzrayim, in the days when he took all the Jewish people out of the land of Egypt. And furthermore, the word Pesach means to jump, a quantum leap. The first Pesach is one quantum leap. Pesach Sheni means a second quantum leap. A quantum leap so great that you cannot compare the first leap to the second leap. In other words, the second leap is incomparable to the first leap. And this represents not only the second Pesach, but the way it's going to be when Mashiach will come. As it says, when Mashiach will come, Arenu Neflois, we will see wonders, even wondrous compared to the miracles that took place in the land of Egypt. And thirdly, the Medrash tells us that the going out of Egypt is compared to the light of a candle. The light of a candle can be extinguished. However, the light of Mashiach, the redemption that will take place through the coming of Mashiach, will be like the light of the sun. The light of the sun can never be extinguished. And the same is true with Pesach Sheni, that compared to the first Passover is like the light of the sun compared to the light of a candle. So that is the remez, the hint. Pesach Sheni reminds us there will be a second redemption, an ultimate redemption, the coming of Mashiach. What is Drush? What is the halacha? The halacha is that the Rambam says that the mitzvah of the second Pesach is actually counted as a mitzvah on its own. Many commentaries and codifiers ask a question: why do we count Pesach Sheni as a mitzvah? Simply because Pesach Sheni is coming to make up for the loss of Pesach Rishon, of the first Pesach. It should not be counted as a separate mitzvah. And furthermore, someone who brought the first Paschal lamb does not bring the second Paschal lamb. So it's not a mitzvah for everybody. So why does the Rambam count this as a mitzvah? And the Rambam goes on to say that, number one, it's a mitzvah b'fnei atzmai. We know that the Gemara concludes, our rabbis conclude that it's called a mitzvah on its own. And furthermore, according to the opinion of Rebbe in the Gemara, it's also a regel b'fnei atzmai. It's a holiday on its own. And as you know that even today, it's customary on the second Pesach, on the 14th of Iyar, to eat shmura matzah, to eat matzah just like we ate on the first Pesach. So we find over here an interesting halacha. There's a question to whether or not a katan, a minor, who becomes an adult between the first Pesach and the second Pesach, does he have to bring a korban Pesach? Because really, the second Pesach is a makeup for the first. So only one who is obligated to bring the first should have to bring the second. But a child, one who is a minor, under the age of a bar or bat mitzvah, who had no obligation on the first Pesach to bring a korban, does that individual have to bring a korban on the second Passover? Similarly, gerish and isgayer, a convert that converts between the first Pesach and the second Pesach, do they bring a korban Pesach for the second holiday of Pesach? One might think, because when it came to the first Pesach, they were not Jewish, they had no obligation. Now they become Jewish between the first Pesach and the second Pesach, one should not have to bring the korban Pesach. the Meiri, a commentary on the Tractate of Pesachim, actually states that they should not bring the second Paschal lamb because they had no obligation on the first Pesach. But we find that the Rambam says that they do. Both a katan, a minor that became an adult, and also a ger, a convert that converts, they both bring a korban on the second Pesach. Now even Rebbe, who says that the second Pesach is called a regel b'fnei atzma, is called a holiday on his own, he doesn't mean to say that it's only a holiday without the first Pesach. He means to say that really, even though we have the first Pesach, and a person forgot to bring a korban on the first Pesach, he can bring a korban on the second Pesach, and it has the same qualities as if he brought the korban on the first Pesach. What does that mean? There's two concepts here. There's the mitzvah of the second Pesach and the holiday of the second Pesach. The Rambam uses both terminologies. He says that the second Pesach is a mitzvah on its own and a holiday on its own. A mitzvah on its own means that the individual has the obligation to make up the loss of the first korban, of the first sacrifice. A holiday on its own means that not only can you fulfill the makeup, but it's as if you brought it at that specific time. Because most makeups, most tashlumin, means that I missed my opportunity, I lost the time, but I can still do the mitzvah at a later time. Comes along Rebbe and says, no, it's a holiday on its own, that not only can you do the mitzvah later, but the mitzvah also has its specific time. And that is the 14th day of the month of Iyar. And therefore you are bringing the korban Pesach in the correct time on the 14th day of the month of Iyar. So the question is, even according to Rebbe, how can a convert and a minor that became an adult between the first Pesach and the second Pesach, or one who converts between the first Pesach and the second Pesach, have the obligation to bring the korban, the sacrifice, on the second Pesach? So when it comes to a koto, when it comes to a minor, we find that the Torah says you shall take a sheep for the entire household. The entire household would also include minors. So therefore we see that a minor does have somewhat of a connection even to the first Pesach offering. But how does a convert have a connection to the first Pesach offering? So this is based on the teachings of the Chidah. The Chidah writes that a gerish and his gayer, a convert that converted, we don't say a non-Jew that converted, because a convert that converted was always Jewish. We say that a convert always had a nitzus, had a spark of a neshama kadesha, of a holy soul in him. However, that spark was dormant, and now that they converted, they revealed that spark that was always there. So really already on the first Pesach they had a connection and somewhat of an obligation to bring the Paschal lamb. What does the Soid tell us? What does the Kabbalah tell us? Kabbalah says that the first Pesach offering is connected with the Sfira, the attribute of Malchus, of kingship. The second offering of Pesach Sheni is connected with the Sfira of Yesod. The Sfira of Yesod is the second Sfira from the bottom going upward, and that is the attribute of bonding. What does that mean? So we look into the teachings of Chassidus, and Chassidus asks this question: what is the difference between the first Pesach and the second Pesach? And furthermore, why is it that the Rambam counts the second Pesach as a separate mitzvah? And Chassidus says that we have to understand a few things. Number one is that there's a difference between sur meirav asay toiv. One is to turn away from evil, and the second concept is to do good. The first Pesach is the mitzvah to go away, run away from bad. If you see something bad, something evil, run away from it. But at the same time, you still want to be there. And therefore you have the avodah, the service of iskafia, which means to overcome that temptation, to overcome that desire, to subjugate your will. And that is why the first Pesach falls out in the month of Nisan, which is the first month of the year, implying the first step towards getting closer to God is by running away from evil. And that is also the sphere of Malchus. Malchus represents kingship. What is kingship? Kingship means that I'm the citizen and God's the king. So I fear the king, and therefore I will do what the king wants. But really I have my own desires. And therefore, sur meirah, I will run away from those desires. On another level, this is called the idea of bitul hayesh, to nullify one's own ego. In other words, the I is still there. I want to do this, I want to do that, but I will nullify my ego for something bigger than me, which is God. And therefore we say that even though Pesach is called dilug, Pesach means to jump, a quantum leap, the quantum leap is still somewhat limited. It's a quantum leap that God jumped over the doors, only the doors of the houses of the Egyptians. The door represents Malchus, which is kingship, implying yirat atah, the lower level of fear, that you have fear of God, fear of punishment, and therefore sur meirah, you are running away from the evil. And that is the first Pesach. That is one mitzvah. Then you have a second mitzvah, the second Pesach, and that's a higher level. It's the second month, the second stage of our redemption. And that alludes to the idea of asay toiv, to run, to do good. And this implies the concept of hishapcha, total transformation. And that is why it's in the second month of the year, the month that we recite every single day, the Sfirat Omer, the counting of the Omer. The word Sfira means light, like sapphire, because the second month of the year is a time when the light of God shines down and illuminates us, and therefore it inspires us. And that is why the month of Iyar is actually an acronym for Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Rachel, implying the avos and the imos, the matriarchs and the patriarchs, who are considered to be a markava, a chariot for God. They had no will of their own, which is called bitul b'mitzias, and that is to nullify the I. There's no longer the I. The entire desire and the entire will is only that of God. And that is why Pesach Sheni, the second Passover, is actually a separate mitzvah. Because the dilug, the quantum leap, is much greater than the first Pesach. It's a quantum leap of Yesoid. The quantum leap of bonding. What is bonding? Bonding means iskashrus, an ava, to connect with God through love, not through fear. And therefore, because you have the love for God, there's a total transformation in one's life. And therefore you have the ability to bring down the light of God and to illuminate the world through the light of Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov and Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. And therefore the second Passover is so great that not only does it have the ability to fix the mistake of the first Pesach, of one who doesn't bring the Paschal lamb, but the quantum leap is so great that it's beyond all bounds, beyond time and space, that it has the ability to bring additional completion and perfection, even to someone that had no obligation to bring the offering on the first Pesach. And that is why, even according to the opinion that Pesach Sheni is a holiday on its own, and therefore one may think that a minor or a convert should not bring the Korban Pesach on the second Passover, comes along the Rambam and he says you should, because the quantum leap is so great that it creates a reality that never existed. And therefore the kata and the minor and also the convert should bring the Korban Pesach for the second Paschal lamb. So this is the mitzvah of the Korban Pesach. the mitzvah of the second Passover. That we see from here that, number one, it's never too late. A person can always make up for the past. Even if he sinned deliberately, he has the ability on Pesach, Sheni, and really every day of the year to remind himself it's never too late. Furthermore, even if that reality never existed, even if that opportunity was not there before, through Pesach Sheni you can make a quantum leap and accomplish things that never even existed. And furthermore, why do we see La Manigora? The Jews came before God and said, why should we be diminished? There was no official mitzvah of Pesach Sheni. There was a mitzvah to bring the first Paschal lamb. Yet, because the Jews requested of God and they pleaded with God, why should we be diminished? So this created a new desire in God, a new will in God, and God created a new mitzvah for the Jewish people. From here we learn pertaining to Mashiach, that if a Jew truly wants Mashiach, and he goes before God and says, Lo manigara, why should we be diminished? Why should we be so long in Golus? Even if perhaps we did not deserve the Geula, the redemption, we have the ability to create a new reality in God, to have this quantum leap beyond time and space, to bring down Mashiach now. Amen. Kein Yehi Ratzon.